The first time I saw Julian, he was drenched in motor oil, his hands smudged black, cursing under his breath at a rusted pickup truck in the middle of Harborside Auto. His hazel eyes caught mine through the chaos of clanging tools, and I swear the world tilted just for a second. I was 25, a stranger in this small Maine town, and he was the kind of trouble I didn't know I'd been searching for. My name's Ethan Carter, and I'd landed in Port Clyde after running from a life that felt like a noose tightening around my neck. Boston was all glass towers and expectations. My parents' dream of me becoming a lawyer, my ex's voice still echoing that I'd never be enough. I'd packed a duffel bag, ditched my phone, and ended up here, a coastal speck where the air smelled of salt and second chances. The auto shop was hiring and I needed cash. I didn't expect Julian Rivera. He was 24, lean but strong, with a laugh that could cut through the fog rolling off the Atlantic. The first day, he tossed me a wrench and said, "Don't break anything, city boy." I didn't, but I wanted to break every wall I'd built around myself when he grinned. Port Clyde was small, though, and small towns talk. I'd heard the whispers. Julian was the guy who'd left for college, came back different, and now lived in a one-room apartment above the diner. Different. That word clung to him like damp sea air. I wasn't out. Not in Boston, not here. I'd spent years dodging mirrors, afraid of what I'd see. But Julian? He wore his truth like a badge, even when the town's sideways glances tried to chip it away. He didn't hide the way he looked at me, and I didn't know if that scared me or set me free. The shop became our world. We'd work late, fixing engines, trading stories. He told me about his mom, who'd raised him alone after his dad split, and how she'd cried when he told her he was gay. Not out of shame, but because she knew the world wouldn't be kind. I told him about my dad, who'd called my art degree a waste, and my life a disappointment. We laughed, we cursed, we got too close. One night, under the fluorescent buzz of the garage, I was changing out of my grease-stained shirt, and Julian's eyes lingered. Not fleeting, not accidental, like he'd been waiting forever. "Your trouble, Ethan?" he said, voice low, a smile tugging at his lips. My heart slammed against my ribs. I wanted to say something back, something brave, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I turned away, pulling on a clean shirt, feeling his gaze burn into my back. The next week, trouble found us. A guy named Travis, a regular at the shop, started hanging around more. He was 30, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that filled the room but never reached his eyes. He'd known Julian since high school, and there was history there. Something Julian wouldn't talk about. Travis would lean too close when he spoke, his hand brushing Julian's arm, and I'd feel a knot twist in my gut. Jealousy? Fear? Couldn't name it. But one day, Travis cornered me behind the shop, his breath sour with beer. "You think you're special, huh? Julian's just confused. He'll come around." I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice. But that night, Julian found me sitting on the docks, staring at the water. He sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. "Travis is an asshole," he said. "Always has been." I wanted to ask about them, about what Travis meant, but Julian's hand found mine, and the world went quiet. His fingers were rough, warm, real. I didn't pull away. Port Clyde wasn't ready for us. The town's pulse was steady, traditional, and we were a disruption. Old man Carter, no relation, owned the shop and started giving me fewer shifts. "Don't need distractions," he muttered, his eyes flicking to Julian. The diner's cook, Miss Lorraine, stopped serving Julian his usual coffee when she saw us laughing together. Whispers turned to stares, and stares turned to words sharp enough to cut. But Julian didn't flinch. He'd walk into the diner, head high, and order his coffee anyway. I wanted to be that brave. One night, after a long shift, Julian dragged me to a bonfire on the beach. A few locals were there, kids our age, passing beers and stories. The firelight danced on Julian's face, and I couldn't look away. Someone strummed a guitar, and Julian leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "Dance with me," he said. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he stood, pulling me up. People stared. My heart pounded, but his hands were on my waist, and the world blurred. Just him, me, and the crackle of the fire. That's when Travis showed up. He was drunk, loud, his voice slicing through the music. "What's this, Rivera? Showing off your new toy?" The air shifted, heavy with tension. Julian's jaw tightened, but he didn't let go of me. "Go home, Travis," he said, voice steady. Travis stepped closer, his shadow looming. "You think you can just do this? In front of everyone?" I felt Julian's grip tighten, protective, defiant. I wanted to say something, anything, but fear glued my tongue. The bonfire scattered after that. People left, mumbling excuses, and Julian and I were alone on the beach, the fire dying to embers. He looked at me, eyes fierce. "I'm not ashamed, Ethan. Not of this. Not of you." My chest ached. I wanted to tell him I wasn't either, but the truth was, I was terrified. Not of him, of what it meant to want him so badly it hurt. The next morning, the shop was quiet. Too quiet. Old man Carter called us into his office. "This ain't working," he said, his voice gruff. "You too, you're stirring things up. I don't need that." Julian laughed, sharp and bitter. "You firing us for existing?" Carter didn't answer, just slid 2 envelopes across the desk. Our final paychecks. We walked out into the gray morning, the weight of it sinking in. Julian kicked a rock, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "This town," he said, "it chews you up if you don't fit." I wanted to argue, to say it'd get better, but the words felt hollow. Instead, I grabbed his hand, right there on the street, where anyone could see. His eyes met mine, surprised, then soft. "You sure about this, city boy?" he asked. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Port Clyde didn't let go easily. The next week, the air felt heavier, like the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for us to break. Julian and I were jobless, but we weren't done. We started fixing cars out of his mom's garage, a cramped space behind her yellow clapboard house. Maria Rivera was a force, small, with sharp eyes and a voice that could command a storm. She'd welcomed me with a plate of tamales and a warning. "You hurt my boy. I'll find you." I believed her. The garage became our sanctuary. We'd work under the dim glow of a single bulb, music from Julian's old radio filling the silence. He'd sing off-key to Springsteen, smudging grease on his cheek, and I'd laugh until my sides hurt. But outside, the town was watching. Travis's truck rolled by too often, his eyes narrowing as he passed. Miss Lorraine spread rumors at the diner, her voice loud enough to carry, "Those boys are trouble." Even Maria got a call from her church group, asking why she let that kind live under her roof. Julian brushed it off, but I saw the cracks. Late at night, when we'd sit on the garage roof, staring at the stars, he'd go quiet. "Sometimes I think about leaving," he admitted once, his voice barely above a whisper. "Starting over somewhere nobody knows me." My stomach twisted. I wanted to beg him to stay, to tell him I'd go with him, but fear kept me silent. What was I to him? A fling? A rebellion? I didn't know and I was too scared to ask. One afternoon, while we were rebuilding a carburetor, Maria burst into the garage, her face pale. "Julian, it's the shop." Someone had spray-painted slurs across the front of Harborside Auto, ugly red letters screaming hate. Old Man Carter had called the cops, but the message was clear. This was about us. Julian's hands shook as he grabbed his jacket. "I'm going down there," he said. I followed, my heart in my throat. The street was buzzing when we arrived. A small crowd had gathered, whispering, pointing. The paint was still wet, dripping like blood. Julian stared at it, his face unreadable. Carter was there, arms crossed, talking to a cop. "Probably just kids," he said, but his eyes flicked to us. The cop, a guy named Officer Daniels, took our statements, but his questions felt sharp, accusing. "You boys been causing trouble?" he asked. Julian's jaw clenched. "We're just living," he said. That night, Julian didn't want to talk. We sat on the docks again, the water black and endless. "This is my home," he said finally. "But sometimes it feels like a cage." I wanted to tell him we could leave, start over, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I leaned against him, my head on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. The next day, Maria called a meeting. She sat us down at her kitchen table, her hands folded tight. "You two need to decide what you're fighting for," she said. "This town's small, but it's not the world. You're stronger than this." Her eyes locked on mine, and I felt exposed, like she could see every doubt I'd buried. Julian reached for my hand under the table, his fingers steady. I squeezed back. We decided to fight, not with fists or shouts, but by existing. We kept the garage going, taking jobs from folks who didn't care about the rumors, mostly out-of-towners and a few locals who'd known Julian since he was a kid. We worked harder, laughed louder, loved braver. One evening, Julian pulled me into the garage, his eyes bright. "I got an idea," he said. He'd found an old motorcycle, rusted but salvageable. "Let's fix it up. Ride it out of here one day." The thought of us, wind in our faces, free, it lit something in me. But Travis wasn't done. He showed up at the garage one night, sober this time, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can just take him?" he said, staring at me. "Julian and we had something." "You're nothing." I froze, my heart pounding. Julian stepped between us, his voice steady. "You don't get to decide who I am, Travis." Travis laughed, cold and sharp, and walked away. But his words lingered, sowing doubt. Had Julian loved him? Did he still? That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the garage roof alone, the stars blurring above me. Julian found me, his footsteps soft on the ladder. "You're thinking too much," he said, sitting beside me. I wanted to ask about Travis, about us, but instead I said, "What if this breaks us?" He looked at me, his eyes fierce. "It won't. I choose you, Ethan." My breath caught. He leaned in, and when his lips met mine, the world fell away. It was messy, desperate, real. I kissed him back, my hands in his hair, my heart wide open. The town didn't stop. The whispers grew louder, the stares sharper. But something shifted in me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was fighting for us. For him. The motorcycle became our rebellion. Every night, we'd wrench and polish, turning rust into something alive. Julian's hands moved with purpose, his focus infectious. "This is our ticket," he'd say, grinning. "You and me, Ethan, riding into the sunset." I'd laugh, but the image stuck. Us free, the road stretching endless before us. It was a dream, fragile but fierce, and it held us together when the town tried to tear us apart. Port Clyde's pressure didn't ease. The garage jobs kept us afloat, but the whispers followed us everywhere. At the market, Mrs. Hensley, who'd once slipped me extra apples, now avoided my eyes. The diner stopped serving us altogether after Miss Lorraine claimed we were bad for business. Maria fought for us, her voice sharp when she confronted Lorraine. "You've known my boy since he was in diapers," she snapped. "You don't get to turn your back now." But Lorraine just pursed her lips, and the door stayed closed. Julian stayed strong, but I saw the toll. His laugh came less often, his eyes heavier. One night, as we worked on the bike, he dropped a wrench, cursing. "I'm tired, Ethan," he said, his voice raw. "Tired of proving I'm worth something. I wanted to fix it, to make the town see him the way I did, brilliant, brave, beautiful. But all I could do was pull him close, my arms around him, his head against my chest. "You're enough," I whispered. He didn't answer, but his hands gripped my shirt like I was his anchor. Travis kept circling. He'd show up at the garage, leaning against his truck, watching us. Once, he left a note taped to the door. "You'll regret this." Julian tore it up, but I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. I wanted to confront Travis, to tell him to back off, but Julian stopped me. "He's not worth it," he said. "He's just loud." But loud could be dangerous, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Travis was waiting for a chance to strike. One afternoon, a new client rolled in. A woman named Clara, mid-30s, with a sharp bob and a beat-up sedan. She was from Portland, passing through, and didn't care about the town's gossip. "Heard you boys are good," she said, tossing us her keys. We fixed her car in record time, and she tipped us generously. "Don't let this place grind you down," she said as she left. Her words stuck with me, a reminder that there was a world beyond Port Clyde's borders. That night, Julian and I took the motorcycle for a test run. It wasn't finished, but it roared to life, vibrating under us as we sped down a back road. The wind whipped through my hair, and Julian's laughter echoed over the engine's growl. We stopped at a cliff overlooking the ocean, the stars bright above us. He turned to me, his face lit by moonlight. "This is what I want," he said. "You, me, this feeling." I kissed him, hard, my hands cupping his face. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. But freedom came with a cost. The next morning, we found the garage trashed, tools scattered, tires slashed, the motorcycle's fuel line cut. Julian's face went pale, his hands shaking as he picked up a broken wrench. "This is Travis," he said, his voice tight. I wanted to scream, to find Travis and make him pay, but Julian grabbed my arm. "We can't prove it," he said. "And if we go after him, it's what he wants." I hated how right he was. Maria called the cops, but Officer Daniels was no help. "Could have been anyone," he said, barely looking at the damage. Julian didn't argue, but I saw the defeat in his shoulders. That night, we sat in the wrecked garage, cleaning up the mess. "We can't stay here," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Julian looked at me, his eyes searching. "You mean that?" he asked. I nodded. "Let's fix the bike. Let's go." We worked harder, faster, pouring everything into the motorcycle. Maria helped, slipping us cash for parts, her faith in us unwavering. But the town's grip tightened. A group of guys, Travis's friends, started loitering near the house, their laughter sharp and mocking. One night, they threw rocks at the garage windows, the glass shattering around us. Julian pulled me down, shielding me, his breath fast against my ear. "We're okay," he whispered, But we weren't. Not here. The breaking point came a week later. We were at the docks, stealing a moment of peace, when Travis and his crew showed up. He was drunk, his words slurring. "You think you can just parade around like this?" he shouted, stepping too close. Julian stood his ground, his voice steady. "Leave us alone, Travis." But Travis swung, his fist grazing Julian's jaw. I didn't think. I tackled him, my fists flying, rage drowning out fear. Julian pulled me off, his hands strong, his voice urgent. "Ethan, stop." Travis scrambled up, laughing, blood on his lip. "You'll pay for that," he spat, before his friends dragged him away. We stood there, panting, the night pressing in. Julian touched my face, his fingers gentle on my bruised cheek. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "But I did. For him, I'd do anything." The bruise on my cheek throbbed, but Julian's touch was a balm. We didn't go back to the garage that night. Instead, we climbed onto the roof, the stars our only witnesses. "We need a plan," Julian said, his voice steady but tired. "This town, it's not going to change." I wanted to argue, to believe Port Clyde could bend, but the shattered glass and red paint told a different story. "Where would we go?" I asked. He smiled, faint but real. "Anywhere, as long as it's with you." We spent the next days rebuilding, not just the motorcycle, but us. Maria helped us map out a route west, toward Oregon, where she had a cousin who'd offered us a place to crash. "You boys deserve a fresh start," she said, pressing a wad of cash into Julian's hand. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was firm. "Don't come back until you're ready." Julian hugged her, his face buried in her shoulder, and I saw the boy who'd grown up under her fierce love. The motorcycle was nearly done, its chrome gleaming under the garage light. We worked late, our hands moving in sync, the air thick with possibility. But Travis wasn't finished. One evening, as we locked up, we found him waiting, leaning against his truck, a bat in his hand. "You think you can just leave?" he said, his voice low, dangerous. Julian stepped in front of me, his posture rigid. "We're done here, Travis," he said. "Let it go." But Travis swung the bat, smashing the garage's side window. Glass rained down, and I grabbed Julian, pulling him back. This time, we didn't wait for the cops. We ran to Maria's house, hearts pounding. She was already on the phone, calling Daniels, but her face was grim. "You need to go now," she said when she hung up. "Tonight." Julian protested, but she cut him off. "I'll handle this. You two, get out." She handed us a backpack with food, clothes, and the last of her savings. I wanted to thank her, to tell her what she meant, but there was no time. We hugged her, hard, and ran to the garage. The motorcycle roared to life, its engine a defiant scream. I climbed on behind Julian, my arms around his waist, my heart in my throat. The town blurred as we sped through it, streetlights fading into the dark. Travis's truck appeared in the rear view, its headlights glaring. "Hold on," Julian shouted, pushing the bike faster. The road twisted, the ocean a black void beside us. Travis gained, his engine roaring, but Julian was fearless, weaving through turns with a grace I'd never seen. My grip tightened, my face pressed against his back, trusting him completely. We lost Travis at a fork in the road, his truck veering the wrong way. Julian didn't slow down until we hit the highway, the night swallowing us whole. We stopped at a gas station an hour out, the air cool and quiet. Julian turned to me, his face lit by the neon glow. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, my hands still shaking. "I'm with you," I said. He smiled, pulling me into a kiss that felt like a promise. We rode through the night, the road stretching toward a future we couldn't see. Oregon was a dream, but it was ours. We stopped at a diner at dawn, our clothes dusty, our eyes bright. The waitress, a woman with kind eyes, didn't ask questions. She just served us coffee and pancakes, her smile a small gift. Julian reached for my hand across the table, his fingers warm. "We made it," he said. "Not to Oregon, not yet, but out of Port Clyde, out of the cage." The days blurred into miles. We slept in cheap motels, fixed the bike when it sputtered, laughed when we got lost. Julian's smile came back, brighter each day. I started to believe in us, in the life we could build. But doubt lingered. What if Oregon wasn't enough? What if the world wasn't ready for us? I didn't voice it, but Julian knew. One night, under a sky heavy with stars, he pulled me close. "We'll figure it out," he said. "Together." I believed him. Back in Port Clyde, Maria sent us texts. Travis had been arrested, not for us, but for vandalism elsewhere. The town was quieter, she said, but it wasn't home anymore. Not for us. We kept riding, the motorcycle carrying us toward something new. I thought about the first time I saw Julian, oil-smeared and fearless, his eyes locking onto mine. I'd been running from myself then. Now I was running toward him. Oregon welcomed us with rain. Portland's streets were slick, the air sharp with pine and coffee. Maria's cousin, Elena, lived in a small house on the city's edge, with a spare room and a warm smile. "You boys look like you've been through it," she said, handing us mugs of tea. We had bruises, broken glass, and a town that tried to break us. But we were here together, and that was enough. We found work at a bike shop in the city, a place where no one cared who we loved. The owner, a gruff guy named Leo, saw Julian's skill and hired us on the spot. The shop was alive with color, neon signs, polished chrome, music blasting. It felt like a world we could belong to. Julian thrived, his hands steady as he worked, his laugh filling the space. I watched him, my heart full, and wondered how I'd ever doubted this. But the past didn't vanish. I'd wake at night, Travis's voice in my head, the weight of Port Clyde's stairs pressing down. Julian sensed it. One evening, as we walked along the Willamette River, he stopped, turning to me. "You're still carrying it," he said. "The fear." I wanted to deny it, but he was right. I was still afraid, of losing him, of the world turning on us again. He took my face in his hands, his eyes fierce. "We're not going back. This is ours." His kiss was a vow, and I let it anchor me. We built a life, a small apartment, cluttered with books and bike parts. Dinners with Elena, who told stories of her own fight to be herself. Nights where we'd lie in bed, talking about everything and nothing. Julian started painting again, something he'd abandoned after college. His canvases filled our walls, bold, bright, unapologetic. I started drawing sketches of him, of us, of the road that brought us here. We were healing slowly together. One day, a letter arrived from Maria. She was proud, she wrote, and she was coming to visit. She'd sold the house in Port Clyde, ready for her own new start. "You showed me how," she wrote. Julian read the letter, his eyes wet, and I held him, my heart swelling. We weren't just surviving, we were living. The bike shop hosted a community event, a ride through the city to raise money for a local youth center. Julian and I signed up, our motorcycle gleaming under the Oregon sun. The crowd was diverse, loud, joyful. People who didn't flinch when we held hands. As we rode, the wind in our faces, I felt the last of Port Clyde's weight lift. Julian turned to me at a stoplight, his grin wide. "Told you we'd ride into the sunset," he said. I laughed, my hand on his back, the city alive around us. That night, we stood on a hill overlooking Portland, the lights sprawling below. Julian wrapped his arms around me, his chin on my shoulder. "I love you," he said, simple and sure. I'd known it, felt it, but hearing it stole my breath. "I love you too," I said, my voice steady for the first time. We stood there, the world wide open, our future unwritten but ours. Port Clyde had tried to break us, but it made us instead. We'd fought, bled, run, and found each other. The road ahead wasn't certain, but it was ours. And as I looked at Julian, his eyes bright with the city's glow, I knew I'd been changing in front of him all along. Not just my clothes, but my soul bare, raw, real. He'd held his gaze, not because he'd been waiting, but because he saw me, truly, and I saw him. We weren't just a moment. We were forever.